What up, Wizards? It's Completed D from Mtg. We like it a magic, and guess what? Bunch of mom spoilers today, as usual. For this spoiler season, they threw another 35 freaking cards at us today, and also as usual for this spoiler season, a lot of them look dumb good, so we got no time to waste. Let's look at some chords. Now, of course, the way we do things around here is we look at the lower rarity stuff first, but I'm going to give you a little gift. If you want to skip to the battles, it's this time code, and if you want to skip to the rares, it's this time code. But if you want to see all the cards in the video, that starts right now. Let's check it out. Let's look at Temporal Cleansing, Astral Wingspan, and Gift of Completion to start things out today. Now, Temporal Cleansing, I'm going to start with, but this card actually isn't god-awful. It's just got the distinction of being the only common previewed all day. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a sorcery with Convoke. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it into their library second from the top or on the bottom. This can take out tokens. It's non-land permanent, not just creatures, so that's actually pretty good despite the sorcery speed, but yeah, you got to set it up with creatures and stuff. Shouldn't be too hard, but even though it shouldn't be too hard, I don't expect the card to see too much play. It's just a pretty unique effect that I kind of like. This is one of those blue removal effects that we don't see enough of, and it's actually like pseudo powerful when you experience it, so I like the thing. But let's move on to Astral Wingspan. 5 mana, 4 and a blue for an aura. You can convoke this too. It enchants a creature, and when it ETBs, you draw a card. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has flying. So it's not quite like Blue Maul of the Skyclaves or anything, but +2/+2 and flying is a pretty good little bonus, and I like drawing a card too. You might be able to play this for like 2 or 3 mana, but that could get awkward. In that situation, you're probably going to tap a creature down to help play it, and then you're just going to slap this on a creature that you tap down. That's kind of weird. I don't know how much I like that. It's going to happen from time to time. So the card costs a good bit of mana even when convoked, but at least it draws you the card, which is pretty cool. It's a nice little consolation prize for having the stones to put an aura in your limited deck in the first place. I mean, if you don't get blown out while this is on the stack and it actually enters play and it draws a card and all that, you're going to feel pretty good about it. Gonna feel okay with that. Now you got a nice little fat attacker or blocker, whatever you need. So I could see this seeing some limited amount appropriately of limited play, but I don't think it goes any farther than that. But let's go to Gift of Completion now. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you incubate 3. Whenever a Phyrexian you control dies, surveil 1. I won't go so far as to say this is just stone cold bad, right? This isn't necessarily a terrible card. That's kind of the cool thing about today. None of the cards are like straight up super terrible, and even the ones that are kind of bad like this one, you can at least like envision cool things you can do with it. It's not a body, it's an enchantment, which is in some ways an upside. If you're casting it on turn 2, it's a little harder to remove, right? It does kind of give you a body, provided that you want to spend 2 more mana. So, well, I've seen people call this a 2 mana 3/3. It's a 4 mana 3/3. That's nowhere near as good. But one way or the other, there's a nice little extra line of text there. Whenever a Phyrexian you control dies, surveil 1. Like, sure, I'll take it. That seems okay to me. I mean, it's probably not going in like the standard Phyrexian tribal deck or anything, but in limited, like this could be okay. Next up, let's look at Mutagen Connoisseur and Elvish Vat Guardian. Now, Connoisseur is 3 mana, 1 a green and a blue for a 0/5 Vidalcan mutant with flying and vigilance, and it gets +1/+0 for each transformed permanent that you control. There's a bunch of lower rarity stuff that transforms, not just like incubator tokens and stuff, but just like creatures, normal creatures in this set that transform. All like common and uncommon and stuff. Not all of them, most of them. And one last thing actually on this card, if nothing else, it's like Shaq. You know what I mean? It blocks all day. It can't shoot free throws. But this thing will block for you, at least. But let's move on to Vat Guardian. This is 3 mana, 1 a black and a green for a 3/3 Phyrexian elf. And when it ETBs, you incubate 2. You can pay 5 and transform target incubator token. Double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. 5 is a lot more than 2. It's so much more than 2. But even if you just have a thing that's like incubate 2, suddenly you pay 5, you get a 4/4. Like, sure, that's not the worst thing in the world, I guess. Nice little sort of almost signposty uncommon for limited, but just strong in and of itself. You know, 3 mana 3/3 is not the worst thing in the world. And it's got a pretty decent little ETB trigger too. So like, I'll take it in limited, but it's not super strong. While we're looking at gold cards, I should probably go ahead and show you Mirror Shield Hoplite. This dude's interesting. He's just Boros color, so red and a white for a 2 2/2 human soldier with vigilance. And whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a backup ability, copy that ability. You may choose new targets with the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. It's kind of lame, but I mean, do you really expect to play 3 backup guys in the same turn? I'm not too sure. But one way or the other, this is kind of neat. I guess maybe if it didn't read that way, then it could just trigger and then trigger and then trigger. Am I right about that? What? Who cares? One way or the other. There's a bunch of awesome stuff that you can do with this. Just spreading around like extra +1/+1 counters is pretty sick in and of itself. So cool little dude here. I kind of like him and I want to try him out. He's got the right creature type too. He's a soldier. And 2/2 vigilance for 2. Like, it could be worse. So I'm not embarrassed by this guy. I want to try him out. Also, just sorry, but it's kind of neat that you can copy the backup ability and give the creature you just cast its own backup ability, right? You can target it, but also target something else, or you can target 2 different guys with the same backup ability and really deal some damage. So I don't know, dude. I kind of like it a lot, but I'll stop talking about it now. Let's look at some other cards because they exist too. Let's look at Copper Host Crusher along with Change the Equation and Tiller of Flesh. Copper Host Crusher is pretty simple. It's Timmy bait, but I like it. It's 8 mana, 6 and 2 green for an 8/8 Phyrexian Bear Rhino creature types. It's got Trample and Hexproof. Sure. You know what I mean? Probably not the best reanimation target in Standard, but Trample and Hexproof is good combination of abilities, So I will say too that in Limited, let me go back there for a second. We're going to have all these battles and, just gumming the works up and slowing down games and such. I would imagine there's 50 freaking battles in the set. We'll look at 7 more of them today. So there's a lot of battles. And I assume those will slow down play a good bit, allowing you to, ramp and get to this guy. I'm not saying play 3 of them in your deck. Play 1 if you have the appropriate stuff to ramp into it, right? And if you're building a budget reanimator deck in Standard, you could do worse than this guy is all I'm saying. But let's move on to Change the Equation. This actually does look pretty solid. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an instant. Choose 1. Counter target spell with mana value 2 or less, or counter target red or green spell with mana value 6 or less. That's a pretty good little sideboard card right there. We keep seeing these cyclical color hosers in this set. This is the blue one apparently, and it's not bad. If you are up against red or green, it basically just becomes counter target spell for 2 mana, splashable, easy to cast, and all that. So yes, I think is the verdict on that. Let's move on to Tiller of Flesh here. This is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a Phyrexian Knight. Rhymes like dimes. It's a 2/4. Whenever you cast a spell that targets 1 or more permanents, incubate 2. The card's just kind of here. I'm sure that in Limited where you have combat tricks and you can just incubate twice off of your tricks, it's kind of fine, but that's it. It's just fine. Let's move on. Let's check out Oracle of Tragedy and Omen Hawker, the awesome Omen Hawker. But Oracle of Tragedy first. I like this card too. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 1/3 human wizard. When an ETBs or dies, choose 1. Draw a card, then discard a card, or shuffle up to 4 target cards with mana value 3 or greater from your graveyard into your library. You get this trigger on ETBs and dies. That's so cool for just 2 mana, It's kind of like an Omen Speaker in terms of the casting cost and stat line, It's not the best thing in the world, but Omen Speaker has proven before it's not the worst thing in the world either. So I think it's just really solid, dude. It's a cool little card. I love ETB triggers. I like dies triggers. Slap them on the same guy and you pretty much satisfy me almost no matter what I get. But when what I get is filtering, yeah, let's go. And late in the game, that second ability is really good too. But Omen Hawker, man, this is just a single blue mana for a 1/1 Cephalid Advisor. Tap. Add colorless and a blue. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. Tron War Elves, right? I mean, there's a lot of artifacts, is what I'm getting at, that you can activate with this, and even in Standard. I mean, obviously, you go to Commander, Legacy, Modern. I think the card may actually be playable there. Then you get all these ridiculous turn 2 lines, right? But even in Standard, all you have to do is turn 1 this, turn 2 Reckoner Bankbuster. I get to draw a card. That's pretty good, right? Just that in and of itself, it's kind of enough considering how much play Reckoner Bankbuster already sees. But obviously this has to be in a shell that has tons of activated abilities. It doesn't have to be. Kind of wants to be, It really wants to play on turn 2, but also on turn 3, 4, beyond. So this will help activate the Celestus and all kinds of other stuff in Standard, and I just can't wait to get my mitts on it and try to do some dirty stuff. I'm not sure how good the card actually is in a small card pool like Standard, and like I said, I really need to double down on this. I think this card is just nutso, just bananas in older formats like Legacy and stuff, where you just have all of Magic history to choose from in terms of like broken activated abilities. This helps you cast really, really cheaply. So just amazing. You know, blue has had the ability to generate mana in the past, and we see it from time to time, even to this day, but almost never this potent. So again, let's play this thing. Let's see what we can do with it, because there's probably some secrets to unlock. Let's move on to Furnace Rains, Glistening Deluge, and Xerec Strobe Knight. Furnace Rains is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a sorcery. Threaten. It's just threaten. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature until end of turn. It gains haste. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, create a treasure token. So that's kind of neat, right? You basically just get strictly better threaten. You know, you get 3 mana, gain control of the guy till EOT, but you also get the ability to maybe do a treasure token. That's sick. That's actually pretty good. You know, like, keep this in mind in limited. This effect tends to be okay, sometimes even in your main deck. So at sealed, you can just steal your opponent's bomb for a turn. If you got a way to sacrifice it, cool. If you don't, it's still okay. Glistening Deluge is 3 mana, 1 and 2 black for a sorcery. All creatures get -1/-1 till end of turn. Creatures that are green and or white get an additional -2/-2 till end of turn. So if you're playing against like soldiers or something, mono white or whatever, or I guess a deck that plays green, it's theoretically possible in standard. Haven't seen it, but from time to time, right? But still, if you're playing against green or white, this is just like Brotherhood's End or something, you know, just -3 Anger of the Gods. Pick your red 3 damage, 3 mana removal spell, whatever, but it's pretty neat. You know, usually these 3 mana black spells are -2/-2 or something, but it's nice that this one has the ability to get a little bit of extra juice, and it's going to take out most things on the other side of the table in those aggro matchups when you do get the full color value out of it. So sick card. But Xerec Strobe Knight is the least sort of a normal card that's on screen, and that's why I love it. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 human knight with flying and vigilance. You can tap it to create a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance, but you can only activate this if you've cast 2 or more spells this turn. That's right, the ongoing, occasionally seeded in mechanic of casting 2 spells per turn. This is really neat. I think this is just like a really sweet little dude, man. It's just a Windrake, right? It's a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. I guess they slap vigilance on it. Like, sure. That means it can also tap to use its ability and attack in the same turn. So that's a little extra power. I like that. But one way or the other, if you tap this for like one guy ever, I think you've gotten like enough out of it. You know? 3 mana for a 2/2 flying vigilance that made another 2 power. Like, yeah, it's fine. So I kind of like this again, mostly in limited, but I want to try to play it in standard where it is nowhere near good enough. But again, that's never kept me from wanting to play a card before. But now let's look at the stuff what transforms here in the lower rarities before we get to the best uncommon of the day. It might be better than a good number of the rares today. It is that good. But first, let's look at these lower rarities transformable things like Captive Weird along with Skyclave Aerialist and Seraph of New Capenna. Now, Captive Weird is just a single blue mana for a 1/3 Weird with Defender. You can pay 3 and a red Phyrexian mana to turn it into Completed Conjurer. This is a 3/3 Phyrexian Weird. When this creature transforms into Conjurer, exile the top card of your library. Till the end of your next turn, you may play that card. That's not terrible. You know, a little 1 mana 1/3 that you can pay some mana and maybe kinda sorta draw a card off of. In the red way, I guess, you know, could be worse, but it could be much, much better. And I'm not really sure that it's going to be worth playing in a fair number of limited decks. But again, I am loath to play 1-drops in limited unless they're good or have late game value. And this fulfills those conditions. But hey, everybody, Skyclave Aerialist is here. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Merfolk Scout with flying. You can pay 4 and a Phyrexian green to transform it as a sorcery. It transforms into Skyclave Invader. It's a 2/4 flyer. It's a Phyrexian Merfolk Scout. And when it transforms into Skyclave Invader, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you don't put the card onto the battlefield, put it into your hand. So it Coiling Oracles, but it takes like, I don't know, 7 mana, 6 mana maybe in 2 life to Coiling Oracle, which is not great. But in the meantime, it's a 2 mana 2/1 flyer, which is fine in limited. So if you ever actually do get a transform, your guy that isn't embarrassing to play becomes a guy that's even less embarrassing to play. So again, like, you'll stick this in your Simic deck from time to time. But Seraph of New Capenna is easily my favorite of these, mostly because of nostalgia on the back end, but the front end says 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 2/2 Angel Soldier with flying. You can pay 4 and a Phyrexian black to transform it as a sorcery. It transforms into Seraph of New Phyrexia. It's a 3/3 Phyrexian Angel with flying. When Seraph of New Phyrexia attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, Seraph of New Phyrexia gets +2/+1 till end of turn. Where have I heard this? It's kind of like a Fallen Angel, just a little bit, and I really, really like the callback. A lot of games have finished with Fallen Angel flying over for a bunch of damage, and it sucks you can't sacrifice 3 or 4 guys like you could to Fallen Angel, but this will still get the job done a good bit of the time. But as promised, we got one more, I guess, non-battle uncommon to look at today, and it is a doozer, boy. This is Surge of Salvation. This is a single white mana for an instant. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Prevent all damage that black and or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. Ooh, that's pretty... Yikes! That's pretty good. I mean, there's a couple of things that are kind of similar to this, I guess. Well, like Brave the Elements. Is that the card I'm thinking of? There's stuff that's similar to this in older formats that's probably better in the decks that I want to put it in. So I don't want to get too excited about this for older things, but I will say, just based on rate alone, it's ridiculous, right? I mean, it's a 1 mana counter target removal spell for any of your guys, so it's got that going for it. It's also just 1 mana, like, no, I'm not going to let you do that to me this turn. I mean, I guess it doesn't like negate attacks or anything, but just like huge fireball, big spell, invoke despair. That's kind of nice, you know. I just think this is like easily far and away the best uncommon of the day. It's like kind of no debate on that. And it's maybe the best of this like color hosing cycle. It's maybe the best uncommon in the set. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure they've never printed a card better than this. Best Magic card of all time right here. I'm just kidding. But I do think that somewhere in the middle of that gushing about how good this card is lie my true feelings. It's more than a solid card. I think it's going to see a ton of play before it's all said and done. And parting shot on this, by the way, how does mono red like ever win a game against soldiers or mono white or anything like ever again in standard, like especially after sideboards happen, you know? Oh, I blocked your guys that are attacking, and then you want to cast a play with fire on one of my dudes to mess up my blocks. How about I play this and you're done forever? Not only does the play with fire fizzle in that situation, right, but then like none of their guys deal damage to your blocking creatures in combat. They just get blown out and then you attack next turn. I'm just saying that for a single white mana at instant speed, this has a ton of tricks, from saving your bacon and making sure you don't lose the game that turn, to just making sure you counter sort of, you know, a removal spell, to making sure that you don't take any combat damage from them red guys. So, or that Sheoldred, right? Just there's some cool stuff going on with this guy right here. So I just really like this spell. I think I've made that very clear. But let's look at the battles for the set, starting with Invasion of Kamigawa, because it's uncommon. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 4 health siege, and when it enters the battlefield, tap target artifact or creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. That's not terrible. It turns into Rooftop Saboteurs eventually. This is a 2/3 flyer, and when it deals combat damage to a player or a battle, you get to draw yourself a card. So it's kind of neat. I mean, 4 mana for tapping a dude and getting a stun counter feels like a pseudo removal spell at sorcery speed. That's kind of limited playable in blue a little bit. And then eventually, if you want to lose all the tempo you just gained by tapping that guy down, I guess you can attack into it and get yourself a 2/3 flyer that will probably draw you some cards over the course of a game of limited, like 1 or 2, right? So I'm not sure if it happens a little bit too late in the game for you to actually be like reliable with combat damage from Saboteur, but I still kind of like the cut of this card's hair. So I might try to play it on occasion when I, pick blue and limited, but aside from that, I don't think I'll ever play this card. Let's look at another uncommon battle though. This is Invasion of Xerax. This is 4 mana, 2, a blue and a white for a 4 health siege. And when it enters the battlefield, you return up to 1 target creature to its owner's hand. And then it transforms eventually into Vertex Paladin. This is a star angel knight with flying. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. You get a flying Keldon Warlord if you attack it down for 4. So that's kind of neat. If you have enough dudes, and it might make up for the fact that you had to waste an attack step swinging into invasion in the first place. Because, you might have like a flying 5/5 when it's all said and done. But if all you have is like a flying 3/3, I feel like the card's probably not worth it. And that's probably what you're going to have most of the time. So I'm not too sure, but at least it has like a pseudo removal mode on the front half. So it does something when it ETBs. It could be much, much worse. But let's move on to Invasion of Regatha. This one is also uncommon, but this one is definitely worth reading. Let's just say that. It's 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 5 health siege. And when it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to another target battle or opponent and 1 damage to up to 1 target creature. If you attack it down for 5, it becomes Disciples of the Inferno. This is a 4/4 human monk with prowess. And if a non-creature source you control will deal damage to a creature, battle, or opponent, it deals that much damage +2 instead. So suddenly play with fires. Deal 4, lightning strikes deal 5 when you kind of ultimate this. But of course there's tension there. Is it worth attacking this down for 5 or spending a removal spell or, a lightning strike again? Targeting this when you could be targeting your opponent. Is it worth doing that for 5 total health? When again, that's a quarter of your opponent's life total, right? So is it worth spending those burn spells or spending that combat step attacking this down to then get the 4/4 that just, supercharges all of your burn spells? Like maybe it could be, but again, I like the tension there. But what I like more than anything on this card is the fact that it kind of makes up for that tension a little bit by just doming the opponent for 4. You're casting Char at sorcery speed when you cast this card. It can only really hit opponents and of course battles too, but the fact that it's 3 mana for 4 damage to the opponent makes me want to play burn so freaking bad in standard. I mean, we got Play with Fire, we got Lightning Strike, we got In the Festivities, we got Thermo Alchemist, we got Kessig Flame Breather, now we have this, and even a couple of other cards we can play, the Mechanized Warfare or whatever. So just a little guy, little burn deck is shaping up, and I kind of like that. We may never get Lightning Bolt back in standard, but we have Char. We have sorcery speed Char that just hits them right in their ugly face, right in their mug for 4, and I kind of like that. And I should also point out before we get out of here on this card that 4 to a battle is going to be enough to take it out, like, I don't know, 7 times out of 10. I'm not sure. Check my math on that, but I think that 4 is going to be enough to take out a battle in a lot of situations, especially if you can attack it down for some damage first. So that's relevant too. Cool little card. But oh no, my beautiful Mercadia is being invaded. This is 2 mana for Invasion of Mercadia. It's 1 and a red for a 4 health siege. And when it ETBs, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. So you get a little tormenting voice at sorcery speed. And it becomes Chiron Flamewright when you attack it down. This is a 3/3 goblin spell shaper. You can pay 2 and a red and tap it to discard a card to create 2 1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens, and then creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. I actually think this card is quite good. Again, it's sorcery speed, but it's basically tormenting voice just on the front side, and that can be more than playable. I mean, I think ultimately, like, a big takeaway for these battles in the spoiler season is that if a battle is like just kind of meh on its front half and you have to work for the back half, and the back half seems like really pushed and powerful, those aren't that great looking to me, to be honest. I don't want to really work for a good effect on a card that's in my deck and I'm paying mana for, I don't want to play bad cards, even if they become good cards eventually. I just don't want to play a card that's ever really bad, So these battles that look pretty good on the front face, that give you something decent for a good rate, no matter if you ever attack it down or not. Like, those are the battles that look good to me, and these last couple of battles are those. Let's move on into the rare battles. Nailed it. I had to retake this like 3 times because I keep wanting to call these sagas. I don't know why. They're battles. Pretty easy, Dev. Just read. But anyway, Invasion of Karsus is the first rare one of the day. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 red for a 4 health siege. And when it ETBs, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. And if you can attack it down for the 4 health, it becomes Refraction Elemental. This is a 4/4 elemental with ward, pay 2 life. And whenever you cast a spell, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. That's pretty nifty, to be honest. That's not bad whatsoever. I mean, again, there's some tension with this one. You have to devote 4 that would otherwise go to your opponent's face or whatever at this card to get the thing that does this. But then all you have to do is cast 2 spells. And suddenly, you've made the difference up. And I like that. Or attack with it once and it gets through. You've made the difference up. You cast 1 spell and your opponent casts a removal spell at it to kill it. Well, they have to pay the ward 2 life. So again, it's made up for itself in that way. And it was a sweeper in the meantime. Not the best sweeper in the world, but I still think this is pseudo-playable. I really do, because it's kind of tough to deal with once it's on the table. And if it does sit on the table, it rewards you for playing Magic. Isn't that what I hate about Sheoldred? Right? I keep saying that. Sheoldred punishes you for just playing Magic, drawing cards. This rewards you for playing Magic. It gutter snipes. I think that's just super sick. So it's even better than gutter snipe because it's just casting spells, period. And that's just really cool. I'm too excited about the card because I actually don't think it's amazing, but I do think it's okay. But up next, let's check out Invasion of Kaldheim. Oh no, what's happening? It's 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 4 health siege. I keep wanting to say loyalty, but no, it's 4 HP, I guess. And when it enters the battlefield, exile all the cards from your hand, then draw that many cards. Until the end of your next turn, you may play cards exiled this way. And if you do get to attack it down for that 4 there, it becomes Pyre of the World Tree. This is an enchantment. Listen to this. Discard a land card. Pyre of the World Tree deals 2 damage to any target. Awesome. Whenever you discard a land card, exile the top card of your library. You can play that card this turn. Hello, Seismic Assault. You're here. Seismic Assault is here, everybody. That's so cool. I can't wait to build a deck around this card. I'm not super jazzed on battles in general, but there are a few, if you can't tell, that I get excited about. And this is kind of one of them. I don't love, however, I'm going to go back on my rule that I gave a second ago. I don't love the front face of this card, but I do love that it can potentially draw you like 7 cards and you still get to play the cards that were in your hand. But it technically doesn't do anything by, Spike standards. Doesn't put a body on the table. It doesn't remove anything from the table. It doesn't affect the board state whatsoever. And that's a lot to pay 4 mana on. So that part about the card, objectively, sucks. But it's not good. But if you can turn the card over, getting Seismic Assault is a pretty good reward. So I'm going to try it out. Let's freaking go, but let's move on to the 2 mythic battles of the day, starting with Invasion of Innistrad. They're going to have to fight zombies and werewolves and spooky stuff. It's 4 mana, 2 and 2 black for a 5 health siege with Flash, everybody. Need a flash battle. When Invasion of Innistrad enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets fatal pushed until end of turn. It gets -13 until end of turn. And it transforms eventually, 5's a lot, but it'll get there, into Deluge of the Dead. This is an enchantment. When Deluge of the Dead enters the battlefield, create 2 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, and you can pay 2 and a black and exile a card from a graveyard. If it's a creature card, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token. This card does everything, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Like it flashes in at instant speed and kills a guy. Really, really neat that you don't have to devote all of your mana to this on the same turn that you want to attack it down, right? Like you can flash this in end of turn on your opponent's turn and then devote the mana on your turn to killing stuff or whatever to make sure you can actually get in. And I do like that flash on a battle. Looks pretty sexy to me. So good part. It also kills a guy. So that should help you get in for combat damage, and it will like definitely kill that guy. I think like 98% of the time, unless you target a 14/14 with it, but And then when it does flip over, getting 4 power and the ability to create more power and also mess with graveyards on a permanent type that's kind of difficult to deal with, like, God, that actually seems okay, man. There's a reason this card is mythic. And I know that 4 mana for an instant speed removal spell doesn't seem good, but 4 mana for an instant speed removal spell and also 4 power and also more power and also eat your reanimation target, eat the Atraxa from your yard. Like, yeah, what? Okay, it seems all right, Like if you're in a top deck war and you got to draw creatures or whatever, this seems like a nice little thing to have on the battlefield. If your opponent has depopulates in their deck, this seems like a nice thing to have on the battlefield. So I don't know. I just can't, I can't not like it. Last battle of the day here. I know you're tired from all these battles, but there's just one more. We'll push through, we'll win, and we'll eat big old turkey legs in the hall tonight. But let's look at Invasion of Alara next. This is Wooburg, just 5 mana, 1 of each color, for a 7 health siege. But when it enters the battlefield, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile 2 non-land cards with mana value 4 or less. You may cast one of them without paying its mana cost. Put one of them into your hand, and then you put the rest of the exiled cards under your library. It says under your library in the translation, on the bottom of your library in a random order. When you attack it down for that massive amount of life, it becomes Awaken the Maelstrom. This is a sorcery. You just cast a sorcery, which is kind of cool. Awaken the Maelstrom is all colors. Target player draws 2 cards. You may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield. Create a token copy of target permanent you control. Distribute 3+1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures you control. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. I had to take a breath like twice while reading the card. There's a lot of words on it. That's because it does literally everything. If you think of something a magic card can do and the card does it. Like, first of all, the front half of this I think is fine. It's not quite worth the mana value in terms of what you get on the battlefield, right? You pay 5 and you get a 4, mana cost thing. But that should be easy enough in your 5-color deck to pick up a Wandering Emperor or a Sheoldred and just throw it onto the table with this for absolutely free. That's pretty good. That's not do nothing, right? And you get another card in your hand, maybe. You have to not whiff, I guess. But most of the time, you're going to get a card on the table, card in your hand. That's kind of good enough, and it'll help you, by the way, if you get something good enough, help you attack the thing down. When you do attack it down, I think just drawing 2, destroy target permanent is probably good enough. Just ignore the entire middle block of text and just concentrate on when it flips over, draw 2, destroy target permanent. I think that's probably good enough, but if you can fulfill even one of the other modes, it's good, and it's possible to fulfill basically all of them just by having a single artifact creature. So I really want to play this card. I just think that on the front half, it's ridiculously powerful. On the back half, it's, look at that, ridiculously powerful. So I would imagine we have a halfway decent Magic card here that's actually not that hard to cast in Standard when it comes right down to it. Well, everybody, we have made it to the rares. It's such a slog to get past the battles every day. Hopefully they're running out of those. We don't have to do them too many more days. It just takes forever, but one way or the other. We're at the, I guess, normal rares, and there's some good stuff in here. But let's start things out with kind of a, when I say normal, I actually mean just normal, like baseline. This is a Magic card. Let's look at Pile On, which is an appropriate name for a card in terms of like this spoiler season. They just keep piling on cards every day. I'm going to petition Wizards not to put out 50 freaking cards a day. They're killing us content creators. But anyway, let's look at Pile On here. This is 4 mana, 3 and a black for an instant with Convoke. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Surveil 2. That's not bad. I mean, like in the mono black deck, you've got creatures. You got your Evolved Sleeper, Tenacious Underdog, Sheoldred, Gix, Graveyard Trespass. The deck plays like 20 creatures. Phyrexian Fleshgorger. Just keep going with it. So it wouldn't be too hard to convoke this, especially considering you literally never attack with your Sheoldred anyway. It's untapped, So I could imagine actually playing this for like 2 mana. Destroy target creature, planeswalker, instant speed, 2 mana is, again, not hard to envision with this card. And the Surveil 2 is like actually very, very good. I think there's much more value on this than there might appear because Surveil 2 is just intensely good. It's better than you might think it is. And even if you think it's good, it's probably even better than that. Now, I know we've already looked at Timmy bait today, but there's a rare one too, and it is even more so. Honestly, I should have saved that comment for this one. Let's look at Ancient Imperiosaur here. This is a bunch of mana. 7 mana, 5 and 2 green for a 6/6 dino with Convoke. It's got Trample and Ward 2, and it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it for each creature that convoked it. That's right. If you do the math on this, this could be a 2020. It could be a your opponent's starting live total, your opponent's starting live total. So that's, again, I think that it's probably bait to do that. But, even if you only tap one creature to play this, suddenly, do you not have a 6 mana 8/8 Trample Ward? Is that actually not terrible? Tap 2 guys. And what do you have? A 5 mana 10/10 Trample? Is this actually okay? Is this actually like a decent Magic card? Tap 3 guys, and you have a 4 mana. You can do that, right? You can go turn 1 a guy, turn 2 a guy, turn 3 a guy, turn 4, tap those guys. And what do you have? You have a 4 mana 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 12. It's just a 12. Pretty good. I mean, how good does Gigantosaur have to be? And this has Ward, too. It's not like your opponent just blow it away, They can, but it's going to take, like, all of their mana, too. I like that, like, the less mana you pay for it, the bigger it gets. That keeps blowing my mind. Like, actually, if you pay 4 for it, it's 12/12. How is that possible? It's like, because it costs onboard resources, Dev. It's not as easy as it looks, but I honestly don't think it's that hard to tap, like, 2 guys, and it costs 5 mana, and that's like a reasonable cost for this. So, like, talk me out of it. I kind of like it. But let's move on to C Double. This is the opposite kind of bait. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for an instant, and it cannot be copied. Now, you choose one of these. If an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you may choose both. Copy target spell. You may choose new targets for this copy. Or create a token that's a copy of target creature. Late in the game, getting both of these things seems just like it's probably going to win you the game. Am I right about that? Like you have to have another spell in your hand, like worth copying. You have to have the mana to play this spell and that spell. So like, it's a lot harder than it looks, and it's a ton of mana and resources, and like, those are things that matter. It's not just ridiculous all the time. And if you really want the full value, you have to wait until turn like 12. You know what I mean? Like all of that is are things that matter. Just copy target spell, first of all. It doesn't say instant or sorcery. Remember that everything except for lands are spells. Artifacts are spells. Creatures are spells when they're on the stack. So being able to effectively copy permanents, it's a 4 mana clone, isn't it? Isn't it basically just a 4 mana clone with like the most upside you've ever seen? looked at through that lens, like the card looks okay, but it's really good if you are able to cast certain spells for free. And there are multiple cards we've already seen in this set that allow you to cast spells without paying their mana cost. So this sets up nicely with certain things like Hitotsugu and Kairi, for instance, and that's pretty fun. But it also sets up nicely with Convoke, because you'll pay like lower or even free costs for those spells. So if you cast this and then tap a bunch of dudes to convoke a thing for free, you get to copy that. So plays nicely with some of the mechanics in the format already, and I could see, given the exact right interaction that literally wins the game on the spot, I could see there being some sort of combo deck in standard with this. But right now I'm not really sure what the trick is at the moment, but if there's one out there in current standard that we don't have to wait on any other cards to get printed, I'm sure we'll figure it out like day one. We'll all lose to it. It'll be fine. But let's keep it pushing. The Dusk Legion Duelist here. You're going to look into the Dusk Legion again. I missed you guys. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 vampire soldier with vigilance. And whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Duelist, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. It's a hot card, dude. I actually think it's pretty good. I mean, it looks a little bit narrow, but it starts with a not embarrassing PT. Like, this could easily have been a 2 mana 1/1, the way they sometimes balance cards. And then I think it would actually be kind of junk, but it's not the most embarrassing thing to play on your turn 2 without actually proccing it that turn. But you can proc it that turn if you go Kumano Faces Kakazan on turn 1 and then play this on turn 2, draw yourself a card and have yourself a 3/3 too, why don't you, friend? So that's good enough right there. But with like Thundering Raiju coming down on turn 4, put a +1/+1 counter on a draw card. You have Siege Veteran, because this is a soldier, it's got the right creature type. Siege Veteran puts a +1/+1 counter on it. Why don't you draw yourself a little card there, kid? Just like, I don't know, guys. It looks all right to me, and that is nowhere near all of the ways to put +1/+1 counters on this in standard. You know, Wandering Emperor is another good one that you might play in a deck like this. So I'm just saying, you probably won't put a counter on it every single turn, but if you put 2 counters on it and draw 2 cards and you have a 4/4 off your 2-drop, like, I think it's probably done enough work. In Historic, you've got Luminarch Aspirant. I mean, there's just so many things. You draw an extra card every turn. Like, come on, man. There's just so many things that work very well with this in multiple formats. But even in standard, the shallow card pool and all that, there are a lot of very good, actually strong tricks that, don't force you to play bad cards with this thing. So I kind of expect it to show up. But let's check out Deeproot Wayfinder here. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/3 Merfolk Scout. And when it deals combat damage to a player or battle, surveil 1, then you may return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. To the battlefield, you say? That's not bad. I mean, combat damage is a lot. That's actually a pretty big restriction. And if you play a 2 mana 2/3, which aren't like the worst stats in the world on turn 2, they're not the best either. If you play a 2 mana 2/3, it's somewhat likely that it doesn't get through for combat damage next turn, especially if you're on the draw. But if you are on the draw and you're just playing this as a 2 mana guy to block and hold down the fort or whatever, he'll probably trade with something. And that doesn't seem bad either, In the Tyvar decks, or just any self-mill deck that plays like Stick Fingers or Urborg Lorgoy for those kind of cards, this looks freaking phenomenal, Like, if you can, like, somehow mill yourself with like Death Sprout or whatever that mushroom thing is called. It's on screen right here. You play that turn 1 and then mill yourself. Or maybe you play Blanchwood Prowler or some other thing on turn 2 that mills you. You play this a little bit later in the game. Now, it's less likely to get through for combat damage. I'll give you that much. But just the fact that it plays so well in those green-black decks that end up with tons of lands in their graveyard, I'll at least try it out in those piles. I think it might help a little bit. This kind of ramp is really valuable. And even though if I'm going to play like a Mana Dork in the 2-drop slot, I would much rather they just tap for mana some of the time. There are lands decks that care about this, Slow Gurk and stuff like that. The Jund decks that play, lands out of their graveyard. Conduit of Worlds decks. We're seeing some signposts for more lands decks as this set develops. We've got those channel lands from Kamigawa that we discard, and we can play those with this out of our graveyards. There's a lot of neat little tricks with a card like this. And again, I wouldn't be surprised to see this show up and do some interesting stuff. Although, again, combat damage is a big ask, but at least it doesn't have the worst stats in the world. But up next, y'all, last rare of the day, it's Ozolith. Shattered Spire, 2 mana, 1 and a green for a legendary artifact. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters will be put on an artifact or creature you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on that permanent instead. You can also pay 1 and a green and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on target artifact or creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery, and you can cycle it for 2 mana. So another in the long line of hardened, scalesy, or like winding constrictory sort of cards like this. And those have proven to be pretty good over time. You know, those aren't too bad at all. I always love how this line of text reads. That many +1/+1/+1 counters. Just seems like you have to say +1 way too many times. So the answer is 3, by the way. +1/+1/+1. Yeah, it's 3. But anyway. It ends up putting an extra +1/+1 counter on anything that gets one, which means, by the way, if you tap for its ability, the thing gets 2 +1/+1 counters, which we're actually kind of talking a little bit. And even though it's legendary, it mitigates being legendary by being able to cycle it away if you get extra copies, which I think is actually really, really cool, you know? Or if it's just not relevant in a match at the time, if you don't want to spend your turn 2 playing this card, or you draw it late, you don't have any dudes on the board, it's post sweeper or something, again, cycling to make sure you find the answer to a big guy or something. It's all very, very important. So that said, if you're on the play, you got a little bit of breathing room. I wouldn't mind casting this on turn 2 and kind of skipping my turn 2. It doesn't do anything on turn 2, and it doesn't let you block or anything, but there are going to be some games where putting this on the table on turn 2 is more than worth it for the value it's going to bring you as the game goes on. So sweet card. I don't know how much standard play it sees, but effects like this have seen competitive constructed play before. But if nothing else, commander card. I mean, like super, just a great, I would imagine this is an insanely good commander card. So there's that, but I could see it seeing some amount of standard play too, because effects like this typically do, amazingly. But hey, everybody, you made it to the Mythics. Wipe that sweat off your brow. It's the top of the mountain. There's only 3 of these today, unless Mythic Spoiler puts something else up. I'll reload before we finish the video, but there's 3 Mythics today, and they all look pretty good, but I'm going to start with the one that's definitely not the most powerful of these, sadly, but it's easily my favorite card of the day. I am very much in love with Zimini and Dina. This thing looks so awesome to me. First of all, it's 2 of my favorite characters from Strixhaven, and I am the only person that likes Strixhaven, so it means something to me, but still. Zimini and Dia is Soul Tie colors, a black, a green, and a blue. Old school players, we used to call that bug. B-U-G, black, blue, green, bug. But anyway, this is a 3/4 legendary human dryad. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. It's pretty cool. You can also tap it and sacrifice another creature to draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 8 or more lands, repeat this process once. I'm noticing a trend in this set. Every card does everything that a card could possibly do. This drains when you draw extra cards. It sacrifices a creature to draw cards and synergize with itself. It ramps, and then you repeat the thing too. Like, it seems okay, man. It seems fine to me. If you get to tap this like even once, and it shouldn't be too hard. It kind of reminds me of old school Ayara. More than the new school Ayara reminds me of Ayara. But anyway, tap, sack a creature, draw a card. That sounds like an Ayara ability, and it's very good in a sort of, again, aristocrat shell. I hate that if you want to play LSL core in the deck, it has to be 4 colors, but I will make it work. Basically, like every actual ability on the card, from the drain to the sacking to the ramp to the drawing, I'm just kind of, it's all my favorite things to do in Magic, so I'm going to play this one. This is another one. I should write this down for the commanders I want to play video, because I think we found our candidate for this set. But all right, guys, you ready to see Vorinclex yet? This is 5 mana for just Vorinclex. I like that the Priators in this set, that it's just their name. No comma, no nothing. It actually makes them seem so much cooler. Vorinclex is 5 mana, 3 and 2 green for a 6/6 legendary Phyrexian Praetor with trample and reach. And when he ETBs, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle. You can pay 6 and 2 green to exile Klex, return it to the battlefield transformed as a sorcery. Transforms into the Grand Evolution. Now, on Chapter 1, you mill 10 cards, and then you put up to 2 creature cards from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. On Chapter 2, you distribute 7 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. And on Chapter 3, until end of turn, creatures you control gain 1. This creature fights target creature you don't control. And then you exile it and return it to the battlefield front face up. I have seen people complain about this card today, and I don't get that for 5 mana, which isn't that much considering all the things that are on the card. For 5 mana, you get a 6/6 with 2 keyword abilities, and if you ever do flip it over, you get 2 guys as big as you can get off the top of your library, right? And then you get all the +1/+1 counters in the world, and then on chapter 3, you get more fights in a Macon, Georgia Waffle House. I live here, so I can make that joke. I really want to like this a lot if you can't tell. I mean, cards should do something at 5 mana. The turn, they should get you some value of some kind if you're going to pay that much mana for them. Don't get me wrong, as far as 5 drops in the set go, I'd probably rather play like Zergo and Ojutai. I'd probably rather pay 5 for that, but I still don't think I have a problem paying 5 for a big dumb monster in my big dumb monster deck. This is one of the better ones you can have in standard if that's the thing you want to do, and honestly, this card existing kind of makes me want to do that. But up next, it's Sheoldred. I know we get nightmares at this point, but it's Sheoldred. Well, not that art. I want to show you that art. Let me show you this art with the thighs. You know what I'm saying? Who's mommy now? You know what I mean? But anyway, let's look at Sheoldred. This 2 costs 5 mana, 3 and 2 black. For a 4/5, hasn't gotten any bigger since the last set. Just a 4/5 legendary Phyrexian Praetor with menace. When it ETBs, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. You can also pay 4 and a black and exile Shelly, return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control, activate only as a sorcery, and only if the opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. When it transforms, you get the True Scriptures. This, on chapter 1, it says, for each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls. On chapter 2, each opponent discards 3 cards and mills 3 cards. On chapter 3, put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Exile the True Sculptors, turn it back into Shelly on front face. So honestly, this is one of those where on the front face I like it enough too. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a super Necrotal. Like you got to pay more mana for it, and you can't actually target a thing. But a 5 mana 4/5, I'm not going to pretend that's the best stats in the world, but at least it gets a keyword ability, and it takes something off the other side of the table, and they can't just sacrifice a token. They have to get rid of a real thing when this hits the table, and I think that matters a good bit. What also matters is that the very next turn, you paid 5 mana for this. Theoretically, you have another 5 mana to spend. If your opponent has enough things in their yard, this just threatens to, like, if you don't deal with this right now, this is what this says to the opponent. If you don't deal with this right now, you're going to lose. Like, guarantee. You must deal with this before it transforms. Because once it transforms, just a reminder, what all do you do? Okay, you kill something else, and then your opponent discards more or less their entire hand. And then the next turn, you just get every creature from every yard. Like, if you don't deal with this, like, it's going to end the game more or less in the next, like, 2 or 3 turns. If the one mode doesn't end the game, the next one will. And if that one doesn't end the game, the next one will. And I just think that this is like obscenely powerful. But I just really want to hammer home exactly how much this card does and every other card in the set. I feel like every card in the set has a million lines of text, and they all do like, hey, draw a card. Hey, blow a guy up. Hey, blow another guy up. Hey, get all the guys from the yard. Hey, it's just like ridiculous how much all of these cards do in the first place. And even in a set full of cards that do everything, I think this is very close to the top of the mountain of those effects. So just a stupid looking card. It's just so... How many times am I going to say that? Just is a very dumb looking card that I'm temporarily excited about because I just read it for the first time this afternoon. But I'm pretty sure once we're like a couple of months in and I've played against it every other day or 5 times a day, I won't be as excited, but I'll take my excitement for now. It's a good looking Magic card. But everybody, we got a new card alert, Reloaded Mythic spoiler one time, and we have a thing that I haven't read yet. So let's take a look at Sunfall. This is 5 mana for a sorcery. It's 3 and 2 white. That's a line of text. Exile all creatures. Incubate X, where X is the number of creatures exiled this way. 5 mana exile all creatures seems like really powerful to me. So just on that line of text alone, but you blow up 3 guys, incubate 3. It seems okay to like wipe the board and to also create board presence. It's not quite a one-sided wrath. I wouldn't quite call it that, but the more dire the situation, your opponent has like 6 tokens and you hit this. Obviously, Incubate 6 is pretty freaking good. Like, they have to answer your 6/6 once you actually pop it. So, I don't know, man. I think that the exile all creatures with no downside and nothing but upside, and you also get a creature, like, seems really good to me, is all I'm saying. So, it's got to squeeze in to certain slots in standard, and I'm not quite sure it gets there, as ridiculous as that phrase is. Can you imagine if this card was printed in 1998? Can you imagine? How iconic it would be. Exile all guys. What does exile mean? If it were printed back then. But what is incubate? Why does it exile? Why does it do that? It's just... All right, I'm done talking about this. It's pretty good, isn't it? But another hour-long video probably. I keep saying to myself, this one's going to be shorter. I'm gonna not talk incessantly forever and say stuff that doesn't matter about cards. Pad the runtime of the video on accident. I told myself I wasn't going to do it. Here we are. I'm still doing it right now with this little ramble. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed everything that we had to say today. Let me know if I'm wrong on stuff in the comment section. Nobody really popped me on too much yesterday, although I'm pretty sure I was wrong on Archive of Arcavios or Invasion of Arcavios. I think one person in the comment section told me that it only goes and gets one card. I misread it. I thought search your library, graveyard, and or exile for a card meant that you could search all 3 zones for a card, meaning you get 3 cards. But I actually don't. I think you're right, commenter. I don't think it works that way. And you're the only one to call me on it. So good job. You get the comment awards. Who's going to win the comment awards this time? Who knows? But go down there and give me your best shot, kid. Let me know how you felt about all the takes today, what your favorite cards are, how you feel about the set, all that stuff, what decks you want to play, whatever. So just let me know the things. I do read your comments, as I've made pretty clear. And now, before we get out of here, we got a new segment. We're going to do the couch card of the day. Somebody DM'd me on Twitter and suggested that I do this. So good idea. That's a very good idea. What is the couch card of the day? I'm going to not look. As I pick a card from close to the bottom-ish of the stack in the middle of the couch. Oh, nice. Today's card of the day. Couch card of the day. We got a foil Kalain, Reclusive Painter. That's not bad. A little full Kalain action. I'll take that. Yeah, it's good. There's better stuff on the couch, but there's way worse stuff too. We've made a lot of good Kalain decks. You remember that Rakdos Treasure deck from like 2 years ago? This got like more views than any deck tech I'd released in like 2 years at the time. It was a good video. But anyway, that's all I got for this one. Just do all the YouTube stuff. Like the video if you liked it. Even if you didn't like it, I'll tell you what, just like it. It would mean a lot to me. Subscribe if you haven't done that yet for more spoiler content, decks when the set comes out, top 10, blah, 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 sleepers, the things. If you're not subbed to the channel, I really don't know what you're doing. I know nobody subscribes on YouTube ever anymore. No one has subscribed to anyone on YouTube in like the last 3 years. It's a dead art, but resurrect that art just for one day only. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet. Hit the bell for the notifications. Check me out on Twitch over here at Text On Screen. And if you want to support the channel, I would really appreciate that. You can do that at Text On Screen or links in the description for Patreon and Twitch respectively. But anyway, that's all I got for real this time for this one. I love you guys, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.